when I am at a convention and I am talking to some muggle in an elevator about who all these strange people are running around in costumes dressed up like vampires, the analogy that I use is this. I say, take all the characters of Shakespeare, assign them each to an actor, put them in a room, and see what happens. And they can picture this. They can see Falstaff and Hamlet and Jake Lee's talking philosophy in the corner. They can see Desdemona and Juliet and Lydia all talking relationships. They can see Richard III and Iago and Shylock and Aaron all plotting. And they get that because they understand who these characters are. My background is primarily in the theater. I went to a method conservatory. And I went and found the best and worst that the method had to offer. The method has a bit of a sketchy connotation, and that's because, it is at its best a beautiful, honest show, and at worst it is self-indulgent bullshit. To give you some background, the method started with the system by Stanislavski in Russia before the Russian Revolution. It then got moved to New York at the Group Theater before World War II, and then was finally codified by Lee Strasberg, Uta Hagen, Stella Adler at the Actors Studio on West 44th Street, and is there to this day. The early disciples of the method, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Ellen Bernstein, Meryl Streep, Harvey Keitel. And you can see, if you want to see what the method is at its best, you need to go watch Godfather, Godfather 2, Deer Hunter, Dog Day Afternoon, perhaps Al Pacino's best work. And that is at its finest. Now, there are, in its modern incarnation, there are sort of two types of method actors. There are extremes. On the one hand, you have Daniel Day-Lewis. Daniel Day-Lewis is the most method actor there is. For those of you who don't know, he will be a character for the entire run for 6 months. Cameron Diaz was asked, what was it like to work with Daniel Day-Lewis in Gangs of New York? And her answer was, I don't know, I worked with Bill the Butcher. And I don't know if it's Daniel Day-Lewis just doesn't like to play characters where he has to take a bath. But he was asked in an interview, why do you do this thing that you do? Why are you so committed? And his answer was brilliant. His answer was, because I'm no good otherwise. And that's for him. And it's important to remember that it is a method, not the method. Most other actors who consider themselves to be method actors are what I would call method light. And so you have, Hugh Jackman is getting into character to play Wolverine, so he takes a really cold shower. One great example is Russell Crowe got cast in LA Confidential. And he read the book, and he's playing a character named Bud White. And Bud White is this LA cop who is a giant trapped in a small world. And so when he moved to LA, he found the smallest apartment he could find. He wore shoes that were a size too small. He wore suits that were a size too small. And this is what sort of helped him find his character. Method acting is trying to be as realistic as possible. And you call upon your own emotional history to make it real. So Lee Strasberg's one point in that was to use something called effective memory or sense memory. If I am Hamlet, in my day my father has not died, what I do is I call upon some loss in my own life to supplant the death of Hamlet's father. Now, the one thing that Lee Strasberg stressed above all things was that if you were going to do this, then you need to call upon a sense memory that is at least 7 years old. And he did this for two reasons. Number one, if I can call upon a memory, a sense memory, if I need to cry in a scene and I call upon something and it is 7 years old, I'm going to be able to call upon that thing 20 years from now. Second reason, if I'm calling upon something that is new and fresh, then it can overwhelm me. And at that point, it's no longer a performance on stage. It's Dain having a cathartic, therapeutic moment. And that's all fine and good in rehearsal. But that is not what you want on stage, and that's not what the audience paid for. At the Actors Studio, I saw moments that were beautiful and honest and real, and you forget that you're sitting there in a classroom. But I also found what I will call self-indulgent bullshit, and I will tell you a very quick story. So, I'm in a play. It's called Till We Fly Again. It's me and a cat named Sean, and in this scene, we're in a welding shop, and I fire him, and then he holds me hostage with a gun, and it's a captured scene. And we had a teacher who was semi-famous, who we would call Ellen. Now, finish final dress. Sean has a conversation with Ellen. The next day, we had not discussed this. Sean comes in with his gun, throws me across the room, kicks the table so hard that a phone falls over, which needs to ring in 3 pages. A chair almost flies into the audience, and at that point it was no longer 2 characters on stage, but it was Dain and Sean. Show ends, somehow we muddled through it. Stage manager comes back and says, if that ever happens again, I'm just going to turn the lights off on you. And Sean and I did not discuss that. We just sort of ran with it. That Monday we get back into class. Sean is doing some other scene. He's going all crazy about it. He throws another chair, storms out of the room, and Ellen says, what have I created? And me and my dumbass, I say, Ellen, he's doing exactly what you taught him to do. And for the next half hour, I proceeded to get yelled at with the notion of Ellen's perspective, which was, if an actor can make you feel something real on stage, that is always good. And my argument is that is all fine and good in rehearsal. But there comes a point when the needs of the play, the needs of the story, outweigh your insignificant honesty. Now, there are certainly other styles of acting. Sandy Meisner, for which William H. Macy, David Mamet, doesn't believe in sense memory. They're sort of believing only in the present circumstances and through repetition. The most famous story in all of theater is between Dustin Hoffman and Laurence Olivier. Anyone know the story?
Marathon Man?
Marathon Man. So, Dustin Hoffman's going to get tortured by this Nazi dentist played by Sir Laurence Olivier. So Dustin Hoffman's getting into character. He doesn't sleep for 3 days, he doesn't take a shower, he runs up 12 flights of stairs, he gets to the set and he looks terrible. And Sir Laurence Olivier goes to him and says, Dustin, are you right, my brother? What's wrong? And Dustin Hoffman says, oh yeah, I'm just getting into character. And Sir Laurence Olivier says, have you tried acting, my dear boy? At the end of all of this, we're all trying to build a character. We're all sort of playing upon our own personal fantasies. And in theater, you have a story. It's an arc. There isn't a lot of deviation. It's written by a playwright. The actors are more tools of the director's vision. And it is in many ways an art form. LARP can be artistic, but there is a level of cooperative play. It is both your own personal story and the collective story. It has a recreational aspect, and while there are sometimes points where theater and LARP sort of coalesce, the main thing they have in common is character. You want to build a character that is different than you. Now, there are plenty of actors and plenty of LARPers who have made entire careers of just playing themselves. Michael Caine, Morgan Freeman are fantastic people, but I can show you the past 10 headshots from their past 10 movies, and you won't be able to tell me which is which. By contrast, you have character actors, Meryl Streep, Tom Hardy, Gary Oldman, Johnny Depp, who become these other creations, and that's more where I come from. That's my preference, and that's if there's one thing to take away from today is my encouragement of trying to create a character that is different from you. And you can sort of do this in one of 2 ways. There's a physical and an emotional aspect. I talked about this a little earlier today. But for the physical aspect, to create a physicality to your character that doesn't require you to spend $70,000 in a grad school, you can try a couple different things. One method is elemental: earth, wind, fire, water. To assign that to your character. Fire is combustible, it is dangerous, it is spontaneous. This is Tony Montana from Scarface, this is Heath Ledger from The Joker. Earth is stoic, earth is still. Spock, Godfather. Water is emotional. If you learn anything from Terra, it's all emotion. Marla Singer from Fight Club, Inara from Firefly. It is mercurial, it is emotional, it is vulnerable, it is sensitive. Finally, Wynne. Wynne is Metze, Obi-Wan Kenobi, wise, thinking, analytical. And most people are a combination of these things. But if you're trying to create a character that's different than you, then one thing you can do is sort of take one of these elements and put it upon yourself and just run with it to see what happens. Another aspect comes from commedia, and that is to create physical, mental, and social physicalities. Physical is any comic book hero that you've ever seen. It's jaw, chest, biceps, thighs. Emotional is eyes, upper chest, forearms, and shins. Any ballerina you've ever seen, Mick Jagger, there's an emotional vulnerability. Mental is forehead, stomach, fingers and toes. It's Mr. Burns, Big Bird, Buddha. And so again, if you're trying to create a character that is different than you, then just changing your physicality just a little bit. It feels weird at first. You go into game, you're trying this new thing, and it feels awkward. But once you get into it, it feels like an old glove. And by your third, fourth, fifth game, it is so easy to drop in, and it's so easy to drop out. That's the physical part. In terms of the emotional part, the one thing I want to say is, if you are building a character that has this emotional background, then you are creating a person suit to put upon you. In theater, I know when the show is done because there is applause and I get to bow and I walk home and that is it. I don't carry that baggage with me. But if there's one thing you take away from this, is that if I'm building a character that is physically different from me, and then is emotionally different from me, and I'm calling upon my own backstory, my own motivations, most characters, most people in life did not become what they became because of their victories, but because of their defeats. You can't have character without regret. Most villains don't believe that they're being villainous. Everyone has their own intentions and wants and needs, and those need to be clearly defined to create a character, and my advice is to make that as different as possible from yourself. If for no other reason, that when the game is done, you can take off the person suit. You can remember that it is a game. You take off the person suit, and then you can sit down and talk about it, and analyze and adjust. And that is, for me, the very definition of playing a character in a way. It is experiencing something in a safe way that allows you to walk away and remember that it is a game. You don't have to take that baggage with you. I feel you should do that by creating something that is as different from you as possible to explore these things, which are all very you. Thank you for your time.